Hello and welcome to Retro Reviews, my channel where I review my favorite retro video games of all time as well as some modern releases I have recently finished. Today I want to talk about 10 franchises that I think should make a comeback in 2025 specifically. These are also franchises I think have a realistic shot of coming back in 2025. So no like moonshots here. Some honorable mentions I want to get out of the way right away are going to be Half-Life. I don't think we're seeing Half-Life 3 anytime soon or ever. We recently got confirmation about what the story was going to be like. It seems like they've mostly just moved on from that. Also Infamous and Sly Cooper. As much as I love both of those series, Sucker Punch is hard at work on Ghost of Yotei. I don't think we're going to see either of those return anytime soon. I think they're going to keep moving forward, likely not visit those franchises for a very long time, if ever. So I think that's probably on the back burner if anything else. Conquer isn't technically a series, one of my favorite video games of all time. I've been waiting for a sequel for a billion years. I don't think it's ever coming. I'm almost positive it's never coming, so that's totally fine. Clock Tower I think would be really fun to make a return, but I don't think it's super realistic. But I love nice horror games, and I think that'd be a fun franchise to revisit. Bloodborne is another one, not a franchise, but part of the FromSoft catalog. We've just got no indication that we're going to be getting a new Bloodborne game or a Bloodborne remaster or remake, so I don't think it's good to get our hopes up at this point. But also Dead Space. Dead Space technically did get a remake fairly recently. It was phenomenal. Apparently it did not sell well enough, despite selling so well, not well enough for EA, because it's not a microtransaction riddled like free to play game that you can make millions of dollars off of all the time and continually make money off of. I've heard there are no plans to make a Dead Space 2 remake. As much as I'd love for them to get a shot at redoing Dead Space 3 entirely and giving us an earnest Dead Space 4, I just don't think it's going to happen. So with that out of the way, my honorable mentions out of the way, let's get into number 10, which is going to be SSX. I love this franchise. I think it's so much fun. SSX 3 and SSX Tricky are some of my favorite sports games ever. They're just tons of fun. The arcade style rush that you get going down the mountain on your snowboard, either racing people or just going for trick points, it's just a thrill. I love snowboarding myself. I've been snowboarding since I was like 10 years old, maybe even less. Maybe I was 9 or 8. But I really love snowboarding. I love the exhilaration of going down a mountain. And I feel like SSX 3 especially just captured that so well. And it feels very much like a Tony Hawk game in the best way possible. And I just love that. And with Tony Hawk getting a resurgence, I feel like SSX could maybe get an outside shot. This is probably my biggest moonshot one, but I think SSX deserves some time in the spotlight again. Number 9 is going to be Max Payne. Now, with Remedy really popping off lately, Control doing exceptionally well, Alan Wake 2 finally breaking even, but selling exceptionally well, and I think it will continue to sell well. I know that there are talks to have Max Payne 1 and 2 it being remade right now. I think it would be really good this next year to have Max Payne 1 come back into the spotlight, give us a remake. I'd love to see that franchise continue. Most people talk about Max Payne 3 with such high regard, despite it not doing super well. I'd just love for that to get a big resurgence. I think Remedy deserves it with all the hard work they've put into the game industry in general, but I think that they've made this really beautiful universe, and I'd love to see Max Payne get integrated into that with a remake, like tying it into the Control and the Alan Wake universe. I think would just be really fantastic. Number 8 is going to be F-Zero. I know most people are probably tired of talking about F-Zero. We do have a glimmer of hope because we technically did get a new entry with F-Zero 99, Nintendo's style of battle royale stuff, and it is very fun. I do like F-Zero 99. I do not count that as like a new entry per se. I think it's part of their own little mini series. I don't think it technically counts. The F-Zero series is just so much fun. Fast, frenetic, really difficult, it's just one of those games that's just really fun to play. One of the best kart racers, if you can even call it that. I guess probably just straight racing games. It's just so much fun. I know it didn't sell exceptionally well, but it has such a huge cult following now. I feel like people would be chomping at the bit to get a new F-Zero game, and I think that'd put a renewed interest in like the Smash Brothers franchise for the Captain Falcon character. Maybe we can get some more characters in there. I think that just would be really cool, and I'm really ready for something like that. I think a new racing game in the vein of F-Zero really would scratch that itch for me. So why not just give us a new F-Zero game finally? Number 7 is going to be Jet Set Radio. I love the Jet Set Radio games. I recently reviewed Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, which is a spiritual successor. I gave it a platinum rank. I talked about how phenomenal that game is. And I know that Sega has confirmed that they are revisiting a lot of their old franchises, including Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi. I believe 2025 was the year that they stated that they'd start releasing these games. So I think there's a really good shot that that game comes out this upcoming year. I think it's a great time. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk enjoyed a lot of time in the sun. One of the best games of the year when it came out. Really just a great shining a beacon for that, I guess, its own genre at this point. Jet Set Radio and Bomb Rush Cyberpunk are just their own thing now, but it's really cool to see any kind of interest in that franchise, because I remember playing Jet Set Radio as a kid. It was so much fun. The one on the Xbox did decently well, but they just have not revisited the franchise since. So I'm very hopeful that this reboot will do a lot for the franchise moving forward, and I hope it ends up being just as good as I remember Jet Set Radio being on the Dreamcast. Number 6 is going to be Banjo-Kazooie. I know this is one maybe feels like a moonshot for some people, but I've seen so much talk about this. I've seen confirmations from like random reports saying there definitely is a new Banjo game in development, others saying there definitely isn't. This new studio is working on it, Toys for Bob is working on it, all of these things. But I do think that people have been talking about Banjo for long enough. Banjo finally came to Smash. There has been enough interest in the property. I feel like it's time. And I feel like Microsoft knows it's time for them to really step up in the games department. That's why they're giving us a lot of like new entries in these old franchises. State of Decay, we've got Gears of War, we've got Doom getting a new I guess that one's not like a renewed franchise. They've been getting games, but they're utilizing those properties. And I feel like Banjo's one that they can really tap into. They just need to get the team that can make a great platformer. We're not revisiting the mistakes of Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. As fun as some people think that game is, clearly the bread and butter is the platforming. That's what people want and they're craving. We've seen that with Astrobot. And I think with Astrobot's success, I feel like Microsoft maybe knows it's time to get back into that genre. It looks like that genre is about to flourish and do some really good things. We're all but certainly getting a new Mario game with the launch of Switch 2. So I feel like this is the time to capitalize on the 3D platformer craze and just really give us a new Banjo game. And I think we'd all be there for it day one, regardless of the platform. Banjo fans would buy an Xbox just to play that game. I am definitely in that camp. Number 5 is going to be Portal. Of all the franchises, I feel like Valve would actually give us a threequel on. Like a true Portal 3. I feel like Portal is definitely the one. Left 4 Dead I could also see, but I just feel like the studio that made that game, they've moved on to their own thing with Back 4 Blood and everything. I feel like Portal is the most likely to actually get a sequel because it feels like they could do some more in that world. I think the Portal mechanic is just so brilliant. Portal 2 is still one of the best games ever made. I feel like of all the ones, please give me that. I know we all want Half-Life 3, but I think Portal 3 would actually be the best choice. And I think they could do it. I think they could pull it off extremely well. Imagine if that was like a launch title alongside like the Steam Deck 2 or something like that. It'd just be a cool thing. Finally break the threequel curse. I just feel like Portal's the franchise to do it. Number 4 is going to be Dino Crisis. Now, I love old horror games. I love the old style, and I love that we're getting a horror game resurgence with remakes with like Resident Evil series, Silent Hill. We've got a lot of these horror franchises that are like going back to the roots, seeing what's actually super scary. And I think Dino Crisis really deserves its time in the sun. That franchise was really underrated. The original game especially was just so good. And I feel like we need a new Dino Crisis game in the style of the Resident Evil remakes. I feel like Capcom knows that they have a lot of leverage going forward. They've been doing extremely well, especially in the remake category. It's time to revive this franchise, and I feel like people would respond in a major way. I mean, like a realistic Resi style remake with dinosaurs would it'd just be perfect. I feel like there's no better time to do it than now. Number 3 is going to be Jak and Daxter. Now, I do think that Naughty Dog are probably pretty busy with their newest project that they're doing. I'm sure they're working on Last of Us Part 3, working on their multiplayer suite game. I know they probably are tied up, and part of the reason I didn't put Sly Cooper or Infamous on this list is because they're tied up with Ghost of Yotei. But I do think there is a small sliver of a chance that maybe they're revisiting some of their old catalog here. And I think Jak and Daxter is definitely the the franchise to revisit. Obviously, they don't own the rights to Crash Bandicoot anymore. They haven't for a very long time. But I think Jak and Daxter would be the one to really give us a renewed interest in the series. I think that would be a great one for Sony as a whole. I feel like they could benefit a lot from that. Again, nostalgia is big right now. We've got stuff like Astrobot showing how much nostalgia like is driving gamers and driving our wallets. Remakes and remasters and stuff are just going hard. I feel like revisiting Jak and Daxter, whether that be a remake of the original game or the original trilogy for that matter, or giving us a brand new entry, would be huge. In fact, why don't we just get a remaster of the original trilogy on the PlayStation 5 and a new Jak and Daxter game? I think that would be really fantastic. So whether it's a remastered bundle, a remake of the original game, or a new entry in the series, I feel like, again, now is the time to strike. We've got to strike while the nostalgia iron is hot, and I feel like Sony could really use the win. And I know that they're focusing, doubling down on those single-player games because they know that's what people love. Jak and Daxter is a good franchise to go back to. Number 2 is going to be Donkey Kong. Now, I know we're getting a Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a brand new Donkey Kong game because it's been a long time. It really has. And especially in the 3D realm, we've only gotten Donkey Kong 64, which is personally my favorite Donkey Kong game. And I would love to see a true sequel to Donkey Kong 64. Give us a new open world. Give us all the original characters from Donkey Kong 64. Give us some new ones. I don't know. Give us a huge cast of characters to play as. Give us a giant open world. I just really need to have that in my life. More Donkey Kong, please. Because even if it's a platformer, even if it's in the style of the Donkey Kong Country games, I'm super fine with that. I love those games too. I'm partial to the 3D world, but like the platformers are some of the best games ever made, especially on the Super Nintendo. I loved Donkey Kong Country 2 especially. That one's super high up on my list, but I would just love to see Donkey Kong get his time in the sun again. We've gotten Mario vs. Donkey Kong. We've got an HD version of Donkey Kong Country Returns. Give us a new entry in one of Donkey Kong's actual series. Please. No more remasters, no more remakes. Give me a new Donkey Kong game. I'm begging you, Nintendo. Of all the franchises you need to revisit, Donkey Kong is the one. And number 1 is going to be Castlevania. I was going to have DK at number 1, but I remembered how phenomenal Castlevania has been and how good it was up until Konami just decided to stop caring about video games. I just really need to see this series make a resurgence. I've been playing through the old Game Boy Advance games. I'm jumping into the DS games soon. It's just so lovely. I love the perfection that they captured with the Game Boy Advance and DS era, and even like the PlayStation 1 era with Symphony of the Night, one of the best games of all time, hands down. Metroidvanias are flourishing right now. People are craving them. People are like, new ones are coming out all the time and people are just gobbling them up. Let's get a true Castlevania game, not just a Metroidvania experience. Let's get a new one in the franchise. I know Konami can do it. I know that they're having like at least a little bit renewed interest in games at this point. We've got Silent Hill 2 remake. Let's get a new Castlevania game. I wouldn't even mind if it was the new like 3D style ones, like the like hack and slash type games. Those actually kind of rule too. I would prefer a side-scrolling actual Metroidvania here, but I'll take what I can get at this point. I think Castlevania is a really, I don't know if underrated's appropriate because it was rated so highly when it was out and about, but it's just been gone for so long. I think it needs a resurgence. We need to be reminded why it's a Metroidvania, and I think Konami needs to do that. So those are 10 franchises I think need to make a resurgence in 2025 specifically and have a good chance to do so. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Let me know what franchises you really miss, ones that you really think should come back. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.